Hey, everybody, Dr. Meri Crouley for Now is the Time. And I have an amazing guest in the program today. It's attorney Leigh Dundis, human rights attorney. Literally, she's been traveling around the country for the last 5 years, as well as myself. And we've been at many of these Reawaken America events, fighting for freedom. And we've been making a difference. We're going to be talking about a number of things that have to do with what's happening right now, even with the Pope dying and Klaus Schwab stepping down. But before we do that, I've actually been taking the root brands, the clean slate, the Trinity pack for the last, 4 years, because it's not just, you didn't take the shot or the jab, but the shedding. I mean, it's really gotten into everybody in some capacity or another. And this product actually helps clean your blood. Let's roll that commercial, please.
Hi, my name is Dr. Christina Rahm, and I am a scientist, but before I was a scientist, I was actually a psychologist. I learned a lot about neurotransmission, and then when I became a scientist, I started noticing and researching how people got sad, how people became angry, how they were stressed, how they were anxious. Heavy metals in our environment, environmental stressors, as well as parasites, as well as fungus, all of these things add up to a world and environment that is toxic. When you have heavy metals and nuclear waste in the land, air, and water, it doesn't even leave the stratosphere. In fact, a mother passes these on to her child in the stomach. So we have compounded this over time. That was one of the reasons that I created the Trinity, which was clean slate, to really eradicate things out of the body, to help restore nutrients into the body, and zero in. Zero in was really one of my gifts as a psychologist and a scientist. There were certain ingredients like turmeric, curcumin, aloe vera. There were certain things like L-theanine, L-arginine that could really help people. There are a lot of ingredients, and I've worked with all of them. But I finally was able to work on a formula that I really think is the best that's out there. It's something that really helps the body because it supports the neurotransmission through natural ingredients. I wanted solutions for all the people that I had seen as a psychologist that had issues. Zero in was definitely my answer to that. I personally take one in the morning, and it's an adaptogenic, so it really adapts to different people, like personalized medicine. I hope you try it. It's something that goes along with the Trinity, or it's something you can take alone, but it is something that can help in numerous areas of your life.
And so if you go to therootbrands.com and you put in my promo code, now is the time, it's free to become an affiliate, and then you just go and shop. I initially purchased the Trinity, and I take this every day, the clean slate. It's a couple drops in the morning and a couple at night, which is a zeolite formulation that pulls the toxins and the graphene oxide out, and then it puts the trace minerals you need back in. But anyway, it really helps, and I hope you order some. It's really great. So anyway, Leigh, it's good to see you. How have you been, my friend?
I've been well, and it's good to see you also. I'm excited for this new time we're in. We get a brief break here in eternity to make a difference now that we've got some decent leadership. And I'm glad that we all persisted on a given course to, stay that course so that we could get to a bit of at least a temporary victory. I think it's we the people who need to do the work now to help sort of firm it up. But yeah, we're in a whole new era, and thank God literally for it. I feel like, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like I can finally breathe again. So it's great.
Well, no, and we are in that position that we need to really take action. And, you've been somebody, for people that don't really know your background, I mean, you've been working in human rights, but with human sex trafficking. Tell them just a brief background about what happened when you were overseas and some of the things you did, and about a case and you're working on here in Florida too.
Yeah. So for those of your listeners and viewers who didn't know me before 2020, and most people didn't, I actually intentionally kept a really low profile. I didn't need the Asian mafias that I was fighting against in Southeast Asia and the brothel industry to find me, 10 miles down the road here in Orange County from Garden Grove, where a lot of those Asian mafias have little satellite posts here in America. So I kept a very low profile. But the reason for that is from 2013 onward, I had been fighting human trafficking and sex slavery in primarily Southeast Asia. I had become general counsel to the A21 campaign that was founded by Nick and Christine Kane. She's a pastor, church planter, was traveling in Greece some years prior to that, and was walking down a terminal in an airport, and there were just all these missing teenager, mainly female photos. And she finally turned to somebody in the airport and was like, what the heck? Like, how many, talking thousands. And she's like, how many missing children can Greece probably, possibly have? And they were like, oh, let us clue you into what this is. This is sex trafficking. And so she wanted to do something about it. And she founded an offshoot of her ministry that did only the anti-sex slavery work, called the A21 campaign, which stands for Abolishing 21st Century Slavery. And that is the goal, is to abolish slavery of all forms in our lifetime. But they focus primarily on sex slavery. So I actually met them, Meri, when I was traveling overseas with my husband and my daughter, who was 8 years old at the time. Long story somewhat shorter, I got really bored. I had never really traveled. I traveled for work, but I had never traveled for more than a few days where I didn't have anything to do. And my husband had sold his healthcare medical practice, and we were over in Australia visiting church friends. And 3 days in, I was crawling the walls. I was just not used to not working. And so I started cold calling anti-sex slavery nonprofits over there in Australia, New Zealand, Asia. And I'm like, yeah, I want to volunteer my time. And they're like, wait, who are you? Some do-gooder white lady from Orange County, California? Like, bye. So that went rapidly nowhere. And then about 3 or 4 weeks later, we had left Australia at this point. We'd been there for a few months, and now we were in New Zealand. And my phone rang, and it was a 714 area code that was not my mother. And it was our New Zealand cell phone, because we had left our American cell phones at home. And I'm like, who the heck is calling me from 714 that's not family? And it was a callback from one of the many messages I had left. And it turned out there was a couple who had adopted 2 Vietnamese orphans here in Orange County, and they felt bad they couldn't adopt them all. So they opened some orphanages, Meri, over in Vietnam. And, 10 years later, fast forward, they're seeing a lot of their youth that are coming through the orphanages being sex trafficked or having been sex trafficked. So they, in turn, even though they owned restaurants in Orange County, they invited friends of theirs from church, I forget if it was Saddleback or Mariners, to go with them to Vietnam to meet with the prime minister, some muckety muck up there, to sort of get a feel for the sex slavery situation in Asia. And their friends from church were the executive crew. It was Nick Kane and a couple of his VPs from the sex slavery ministry, the A21 campaign. And we all met for the very first time in Da Nang, Vietnam on May 23rd of 2013. And I went to the meeting, sight unseen. They trusted me. I don't know why. I guess I looked like a believable lawyer, which is a bit of an oxymoron. But I went to some of the meetings with them. I fell in love with the work, and I came home with a job as their general counsel, like the attorney for the organization. But really what they were starting to do, they had been operating primarily in Europe, and they were wanting to open a Southeast Asia enterprise to fight the Cambodian, Thailand brothel trade over there. So I ended up living part-time. Every month I'd fly back and forth in Thailand, and we started doing anti-sex slavery work. And I was running undercover crews of former SWAT trained, former Navy SEAL type guys into the child brothels, outfitting them with audio video watches and glasses and key fobs that actually had audio video recording for very dim, low light situations like you see in bars and brothels. And they were going into those places and amassing intel on how many pedophiles are here to buy the kids, who's the mom Hassan, which mafia is she working for, how many bouncers does she have, are they packing heat or just knives, so that when we went back in, ideally to bust the brothels, we knew what we were walking into. Was it going to be a firefight? Was it going to be pretty chill? And we were working a lot with the Thai government and also various other governments, because it wasn't enough for me. Most of the ways, just so your listeners understand, most of the way it works is a lot of these organizations that work in a para-government, paramilitary, doing, the OUR, underground, all that stuff, they go in and they're primarily looking to take out the brothel or the mama-san or the sex trafficker or the pimp, the seller, if you will. And I told my guys, I'm like, that's not enough for me. Like, yeah, we want to bring the brothels down, but if you're sitting on a bar stool, scoping out the place, and you're talking to a dentist from Chicago who's there to buy a 5-year-old for a week, freaking get his name and number, dude. Like, I'll turn it over to my, HSI, Homeland Security guys, and we'll pick that guy up on his way back through LAX or O'Hare. And that's what we did. We were interfacing with a lot of the different, Interpol, stateside FBI, DHS, Department of Homeland type entities abroad and here, so that we were picking up the pedophile guys as well. And a lot of people don't know this. Most of the time when you go to a foreign country and you commit a crime there, you cannot be prosecuted in America for a crime you committed in Europe somewhere or in Asia, except for sex trafficking. That is considered to be such a heinous crime, such an injustice against the children, that you can be a pedophile living in LA or Chicago. You can fly to Phnom Penh, Cambodia, or Sungai Kalak, Thailand, where I worked. And if you go rape a baby over there and you come home and pretend to be the happy Boy Scout leader, accountant, happy father of 3, husband of 1, and somebody like me turns you in, you can and will be busted here for the crimes you committed over there. And then we have a choice. We can either prosecute you here and you can go do time in a white collar minimum security club fed, or, and this was shocking to me, I was talking to an FBI guy the first month I was on the job. We were having a bite of food down in Long Beach at a deli. And I go, well, so where are we prosecuting? Like, I didn't know anything at the time, like, where do you guys prosecute once I turn the names over? And he's like, yeah, we could prosecute him here. But, if we think we're going to get a conviction in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, a lot of times we'll just let Cambodia prosecute him, because it's a whole lot rougher jail sentence doing time in a Cambodian prison with rats this size and, all the crazy, you're literally going potty in a hole in the ground. It's a whole different ball of wax than going into a nice minimum security prison stateside. So that's what I was doing all the way up until, the whole world went crazy in March of 2020.
Well, Leigh, I went to Thailand in 2017 to do a documentary. I thought it was going to be about what was happening over there with trafficking with a group called Justice Speaks. And then when I came back, God said, no, I want you to show what's happening in America. And so it took me, 4 years. I put my movie Freedom Cry out. But, what I found, Leigh, is a lot of people just almost didn't want to know, like, oh, this is too hard to hear about. I don't want to know. And it's like, you have to get your head out of the sand, because it's happening all over the world. And in particular, America, a million children are missing every year, just even through CPS, foster care, and some of our own entities in America, that people just really don't understand the complexity of this whole situation. Yeah. And, people have to wake up, Leigh. They can't think, oh, well, I don't want to know, because they're grooming your kids.
Yeah.
And
you can't wait till high school to have the conversation. And you can't be thinking, it's a natural human thing. We do, when we hear something awful or ugly or gross or unbelievable or outside of our band of reality and what is easily comprehended, what you want to do is find any sort of difference maker that you can identify that removes you. That's why blaming the victim, blaming the rape victim in particular, is such a thing, even among women. It's like, well, she was wearing a short skirt. She was at a bar. I don't go to bars. I don't drink. I don't wear short skirts. Your brain is naturally wired. It's actually understandable, albeit heinous, naturally wired to point out differences so that you can psychically protect yourself and be like, that's not going to happen to me or mine, right? So that's what we do. We go, even the people who want to talk about sex slavery, they're like, well, that happens over there in Africa or Asia. That happens in Compton or Watts or on the south side of whatever city I'm in, on the wrong side of the tracks. That doesn't happen to rich white people with 4.3 GPA children in all honors AP classes who are double varsity getting recruited by Stanford and Yale. And I'm like, yeah, lady, it happens to your kid too. I've been part of an organization that rescued the 4.3 GPA volleyball player. And the way it works is these guys re-enroll in high school who look like Johnny Depp. They look like they're 15, 16 years old, even though they're 25, or Ralph Macchio, when he played the Karate Kid, he was 25 playing a 15-year-old, right? So they have these young guys and they enroll in high school for a second time, and they start whining and dining your daughter. Well, maybe not whining and dining, but courting her. And they are the perfect, it's called Romeo pimping. They are the perfect Romeo guy. I mean, to the point that this will go on for months. They will show up. Oh, yes, sir. No, ma'am. Nice to meet you. They're making direct eye contact. They're shaking your hand. They're saying, I'm absolutely, let me tell you where we're going. We're going to go have pizza. Then we're going to go bowling in a big group of people. It's not just me and your daughter. It's a big group of co-ed. And I'll have her back if her curfew's at 10. I'll have her back by 9:45 at the latest. And he does. And he does. He's the perfect gentleman. And your daughter's falling in love with him. And you're falling in love with him. You and your husband are like, this is a nice young man. I wouldn't mind if the daughter got married to him eventually, right? And this goes on for months. And then one day he tells some sob story to your daughter. Yeah, I remember when me and my family fell on hard times, a year ago, and my buddy, my best friend, his family gave my dad a loan. Well, it's time to pay back the loan, and we can't, we don't have the money to pay it back. So, my buddy said that he'd just forgive the debt if you just get with him, babe. And your daughter, being a nice church-going, kid of a pastor and a lawyer, another true story, kid of a pastor and a lawyer that I know they got sex trafficked at college, is like, heck no, what are you talking about? I'm a virgin. I haven't even had sex with you. I'm not going to get with your friend. And he keeps on it. He's very persistent. Finally, after weeks of this, he wears her down and she goes, okay, just the one time. And he's like, yeah, babe, just the one time. And then we're going to ride off into the sunset. Kumbaya, hallelujah. And unbeknownst to her, that just one time, he is videotaping her and taking stills. And the next night, after she's gotten with his friend, he drops her off at 9:45. And then he says, all right, bitch, you climb back out your bedroom window after your parents go to bed at midnight and get in the back of my car. I'm going to sell you 8 times tonight for money. And she's like, whoa, what just happened, Invasion of the Body Snatcher? No, I'm not going to do that. And he's like, yeah, you are. And she's like, no, I ain't. And he goes, yeah, you are. Because if you don't, I'm going to take these pictures of you last night and I'm going to send them to your daddy's entire church and your mother's entire law firm and everybody at high school. It's called sextortion. That's the term the FBI coined. It's extortion, blackmail using sex photos. And that is a hard thing for even an adult our age, Meri, to say no to. I mean, the notion that you will be ousted from your tribe because you did something that's kind of sleazy or gray area, that's a hard thing for an adult with all of their frontal lobe critical reasoning capacity on board to say no to and hold their ground on. Try it with an insecure, feeling sort of inferior 15-year-old girl, which is every girl at some point in high school. And that is a match made in hell. And that is how these girls get sextorted. 3 months down the road, your kid is now 89 pounds. She's barfing up her food. Everybody thinks she's just bulimic or picked up a meth habit. Yeah, maybe she's got a meth habit. Yeah, maybe she's anorexic or bulimic. Or maybe she has a pimp that's pimping her out from under your noses every night between midnight and 4 a.m. And we have rescued girls just like that, whose grades are in the toilet. Everybody thinks she's on meth. She's not on meth. She's got a pimp. And it's happening literally on the right side of the tracks in your multi-million-dollar house with your church-going kid who was varsity captain of her volleyball team and has 3 different offers from Harvard and Stanford and Duke.
Well, just to interject, in my film, Ashley is one of the main ones in the film, and same thing. She ran into a guy, was down the street at a party, snuck out with her girlfriend one night, stayed the night at her friend's house, snuck out. There was a handsome, tall, dark, and handsome, started dating her. After 3 months, basically slapped her and said, you're going to work for me or we're going to kill your family and kill you. And I'm telling you the same thing as the sovereign miracle what God did to get her out. I don't want to go into that today, but we're talking to you. But let me tell you, this does happen. But we don't want to put fear out there. We have to tell you that this happens in America, in these homes that you think that you're, basically, that somehow you're not going to get hit by this because you're not living in Compton or living on the wrong side of the tracks. So tell us about this case, Leigh, in Florida that you were talking about.
Yeah, by the way, to leave you not in a state of fear, yes, this happens. Education is your way out of the box. An ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure. A21 has a very good online training program that junior high and up can take. I'm going to be rolling out one if I ever get a minute or two here, but there's lots of good programs that can educate your child in a way that's not going to leave them with nightmares, but lets them know and lets you know the signs and the symptoms, because then you can be aware and head it off the path. It's not always the white panel van at the mall. That is That's called guerrilla pimping, and that is the most rare form of the way these children are trafficked. The far and away winner is Romeo pimping, or sexual abuse that occurs down the road at the Girl Scout leader mom's house when the mom's out of town and the kid's having a slumber party and dad and his creepy friend is there. That is what you got to watch out for. And again, if your kid knows, if you work out a sign where, you call her at a slumber party and she says a code word, she doesn't have to say, I'm scared, I don't want to stay the night, something feels off. She can just be like, oh yeah, it's really amazing, there's a beautiful rainbow or something, and rainbow's your magic word. And then you show up and you go, oh my gosh, family emergency, gonna have to take little Polly out of the slumber party. And your kid's not outed, and you're able to keep a good open dialogue in a way that preserves their social reputation, but also gets them out of harm's way, whether they're at a party where drugs are being done suddenly and they didn't know that was going to happen in high school or college. Like, you've just got to maintain this open communication line. And it is way more important that your child trusts you enough to disclose crazy shit that happens to them than that you punish them for it. Because if you punish them heavily, they are not going to be inclined to disclose. And the far more valuable thing is the disclosure. It is not the fact that they made an error in judgment and ended up at a party that went south on them. That is probably not something to hang around their neck. And that's the other thing. You can work it out, which is like, I'm never going to, ground you or put you on restriction if you call me for help. Like, that those need to be clear divides. I'm not saying no consequences. If your kid is throwing a tantrum, set the toy down, walk out of Target, and don't reward the bad behavior. There's a difference between bad behavior and a mistaken judgment that you want your kid to be able to cry uncle on before it becomes a kidnapping situation or a sex trafficking situation. So again, a lot of these online training programs or in-person training programs are just worth their weight in gold, because you don't want to be rescuing your kid from the situation. You want to be spotting it a mile down the road, or better yet, because you can't be with your kid all the time, having them spot the scene and sidestep it. So that's just my plug on that. This case in Florida, pretty crazy. I had a good-hearted Christian person in another state a couple of years ago orient me to it. And basically, this little girl was born to a mom and a dad. They got divorced at 17 months old. And the dad, as is the norm, ended up coming into town every other weekend for visitation, and would take his toddler daughter and go to his mom's house to enjoy visitation, because of course him and his ex-wife are divorced now, so he's not going to stay at her house. And that was all fine and dandy, except that his mom was, so the grandma, if you will, on the case, was remarried to a convicted sex offender who was already on the Michigan State Sex Offender Registry for having admitted to police detectives to 2 solid years, Meri, from age 13 to 15, of having raped a different wheelchair-bound, brain-injured, handicapped girl who was in his care for physical therapy appointments, because he just couldn't control himself because she wore short shorts to the appointment, and that made him, quote, very aroused. So he was then inspired to stick his penis into her vagina, and then he didn't last very long, and he cleaned up the sperm with a hanky. Those are all direct quotes from his lips to the detectives after a nurse caught this sex offender with his tongue down this 13-year-old's throat or 15-year-old's throat. So Michigan promptly slapped this dude, convicted him of a sex crime, and slapped him on the state sex offender registry, which typically means, as you well know, Meri, that you're not allowed to be around children or their clothes or their toys or anything that reminds you of children, because we all know what these perverts do when they're just sitting around, a stuffed animal or a little kid's dolly or a little kid's clothing, or heaven forbid, the little kid. But notwithstanding this dad, who, by the way, had been a Detroit Metro cop, I believe, and now then a captain at Alcohol, Tobacco, and Beverage in Florida, and then Gainesville Police Department, and then finally a school police officer, because you just can't make this stuff up, down in a big city in Florida. Yeah, he just thought it was a good idea, despite being a cop who normally keeps all children, especially their own, the hell away from sex offenders. He just thought it would be a good idea to take his little toddler preschool age child over to a convicted sex offender's basement every 2 weeks and enjoy his time sharing. Well, apparently enjoying his time sharing reduced down to him and the convicted sex offender step grandpa, his mother's new husband, taking the toddler down into the sex offender's basement that they had tricked out to be a total, like, full on, it looked like a Toys R Us showroom, Meri. It was absolutely disgusting. And taking turns with the baby. So then this little girl gets to be about 4.5 years old, and old enough. This is the sex offender's basement, by the way. So when I say they tricked it out like a little girl, you know, full on Toys R Us, you can see the dollies, the little Holly Hubby ovens, the little bedding, the little toddler bed. And by the way, that's an evidence marker, and that's a missing carpet. Because when the girl was 4.5 years old, she tells the mom, the non-offending parent, she discloses some of what's going on down there. So the mom goes running off to the Michigan State Police, and the deputy undersheriff in Oakland County, a man by the name of Michael McCabe, is like, oh yeah, I just think this is a bitter custody dispute, so we're just going to not really investigate it. He assigns a brand new cop, brand new social worker, and they just do a whimsy whamsy flimsy flamsy sweep it under the carpet investigation and decide there's nothing there to chase. I am telling you, Meri, this a-hole, because that is what he is, Deputy Undersheriff Michael McCabe, did not even get his fat booty off his desk chair and go, you know, the guy's already on the sex offender registry, and now we have a fairly credible report that he's raping babies again. Maybe I should walk my fat ass over there and knock on his door and look in his basement to see if he's actually doing that again, since that's what the allegation is. Couldn't be bothered to even do a knock invest, or even hell, pick up the phone and call the parole and probation people, right? So the mom is very persistent. They close out the investigation. They write it off to a bitter custody dispute, which is a whole bunch of lie right there. Because the mom at that point in time, when the child first disclosed to the mother, had 100% physical, legal, sole custody of the kid. So who the heck is she fighting for custody? Herself? Like, doesn't make any sense. But, you know, this is the PR factory that these accused dads, you know, start spinning. They just confuse the area with all these partial truths, some half lies. And anyway, the case gets, you know, thrown under the carpet for a long time. And then years goes by, and the mom finally gets the attention of Dana Nessel, who is the state attorney general in the state of Michigan. And search warrants issue, and they go out and they actually do the investigation that Under Sheriff McCabe at Oakland County Sheriff never bothered to do. They go into the basement and they start flashing their special lights around like CSI SVU episode. And guess what they find? Not one or two, but six different areas that show hot for suspicious seminal fluids. So they cut the pieces of carpet out. They send it off to the forensic lab in Michigan, for the state police lab. Comes back a few weeks later, 160 septillion times more likely, 160 septillion times more likely that it was, in fact, the dad's seminal fluid than if it was any other unknown, unrelated contributor man on the planet, right? That's the direct quote. 160 septillion times. I had to look up a septillion. That is 24 zeros after the 160. That is what, as a former prosecuting attorney for the LA DA's office, we would have called an open and shut case forensically, okay? And then the sex offender stains that tie out to the grandpa come back 320 quadrillion times more likely that it was his seminal fluid and not anybody else's on the planet. So based on the strength of that, the judge is like, yeah, I'm going to issue arrest warrants. So the grandpa's picked up in Michigan. The dad, the biological dad, who's a cop, is picked up by Jacksonville sheriffs in the middle of working. He's working as a school police officer somewhere down there. And they pick him up and they strip him of all of his devices, his laptops, his phones, his iPads, and they send those to the lab, Internet Crimes Against Children lab, which does the forensics on images. Guess what they find, Meri? Just guess.
I can't even imagine.
They find 10,000 photos, some of which 2 different law enforcement officers subsequently testify under oath contained, and I quote, there we are, naked pictures of both boys and girls that appeared to be possibly prepubescent, and very young children involved in sexual acts with adults, and very young children appearing to be tortured and or in bondage. Now, note what the officers did not say. They didn't say, yeah, it looked like a 17-year-old kid. Could have been 17, could have been 18. They said very young children, okay? That tells me the bodies in these pictures look like very young children, not like maybe could have been an adult, right? No. And possibly prepubescent, right? Like, they're very clear with their words here. So the men get arrested, and one of them is extradited. The dad's extradited by DeSantis back up to Michigan to stand trial. And then the judge is like, dude, I've been on the bench 20 years and I have never not issued a bond or bail to allow guys to bond out and be free men until their criminal trial comes up for a hearing. On this one, she's like, based on the strength of the forensics, you're going into prison. I'm not issuing bail or bond. So these guys spent months in prison. And then, due to one of the many prosecutors who worked on the case's misconduct, in that he fell in love with a different rape victim who was an adult on a different case or something like that, he gets fired or resigned or whatever. And Dana Nessel, the state AG, goes, you know what? We're just not going to not prosecute any of his cases. Worse. Okay. Now, I get that, you know, a preschool kid accusing her biological father, who's a cop, of rape, when you've got allegations of prosecutor misconduct in the middle of that, could be a hard case. Newsflash, lady, you took an oath. You are the top cop in the state of Michigan, and you took a freaking oath to represent, you know, the state of Michigan and the people who are harmed by criminals against the criminals and put them away. That is your damn job. J-O-B. Okay. You have a standalone CSAM case, child sexual abusive material, probable case that it could have gone all the way through trial with a freaking jury of 12 baboons. And they could have looked at these photos of apparently prepubescent kids and apparent very young children involved in sex acts and torture and bondage with adults. And pretty much with zero like room temp IQ going on, they could have gotten it right. And you dismissed that case. Worse, get this, Dana Nessel's office, the officers testified later, they were about to document all the apparent child pornography images they were finding. And then the assistant prosecutor's misconduct came to light. And this is one of the cops now. I was quickly advised by, well, I couldn't tell you who it was, but both the Attorney General and the Michigan State Police do not do anything else with this case, just freeze it. So it stayed frozen for a while. And then I don't know the period of time afterwards, but it came up again because we still have the devices that the images were found on. And then I received guidance from our detective command staff to just dispose of it. Like when I say dispose of it, I don't actually mean throw it in the trash, but release it back to the suspect. If there's nothing that's going to be charged on, just release it and don't even worry about detailing what was on it. So yeah, you heard it first here, guys. That is the Michigan State Attorney General and the detective command staff of Michigan State Police giving direct orders to the cops who were reviewing 10,000 images, some of which had already been found to contain apparent images of prepubescent naked boys and girls and very young children being raped, tortured, and held in bondage. They were ordered to freeze their investigation, not document their investigation, and in the final analysis, hand the freaking evidence back to who? Oh yeah, the alleged criminal. I'm like, really?
Okay, what's happened with this case now? Where is this criminal, this alleged criminal, the father?
Well, he was released back into the general population of all of us. He went back and got his old job as a police school officer back, and they actually made him chief of school police in that area. And then he moved to get sole physical custody of his daughter. And then he had two very pedophile sympathetic judges that he pulled into his case, who ordered all of the girls' therapists off the case, ordered the therapist to not, on the record, the judge said, I would say it's appropriate to not inform the state authorities of the child abuse the girl was trying to disclose to the therapist. Turned out that all of these aberrated orders from the judge made the kid suicidal at the age of 9. And she actually told the judge, I want to die on the record and I feel worthless because when I try to say something to my therapist, they won't let me say it. That was another direct order of the judge to not let the kid disclose. And he goes, oh yeah, I'm so sorry. You're feeling that way, little girl. And then he sealed the record so nobody could find out the fact that he, as a sitting, presiding family law judge in Alachua County, Florida, basically his orders made this kid suicidal, and then he's sweeping it under the carpet. And then in the final analysis, he held her mother in contempt of court, fined the mother $237,629 on his last day on the bench. For what, you might ask? Oh yeah, for cooperating with the Michigan State Police Attorney General investigation that yielded the rock solid evidence that I already told you of, where we had seminal fluid stains 160 septillion times more likely to have originated from the policeman father. And then he gave the case to his colleague, Judge Robert Grubb. The first judge's name was James P. Nylon, Nilon. Second judge on the case was Robert K. Groeb, Groeb, who said, oh yeah, I 100% agree with my earlier judge's orders. I'm going to just double down. I'm going to throw out all the alleged evidence of sexual abuse. I'm like, alleged evidence? If you call that alleged, what the heck do you require to actually admit the evidence that the rape occurred in your courtroom? Come on, buddy. You're making rulings like you're a dinosaur out of the dark ages. And then he gave 50-50 custody back to the dad on January 7th of this year, unsupervised.
So what are you doing on this case, Leigh?
Well, on January 6th of this year, I put on the trial that they weren't allowing to have inside the court, outside the court. I stood on the steps of Alachua County Family Justice Center, and I did a press conference for 2 hours, complete with the crime scene photos and all the stuff I just told you about, and told everybody in the world what a miscarriage of justice I thought this was, and that if they agreed with me and they thought there was something wrong, right, here, that they should notify the Judicial Qualifications Commission, the governor down in Florida, the attorney general down in Florida, and everybody else. Because to me, what this looks like, Meri, and I'm sure you would agree, this looks like at this point a multi-state conspiracy between an attorney general and their office who gave direct orders to destroy evidence on a child porn manufacturing case and a child rape case. And a detective or an undersheriff in that county who wouldn't even investigate it at the first blush. And then another state, we got Florida playing ball now with 2 pedophile sympathizing judges, right? And now we have a child protective agency in Florida who is also, if you ask me, not doing their part to protect this child when she is forced to go down to the state of Florida, because she was forced to show up over the long weekend. February 14th was President's Day. She had to go into her dad's custody. And instead of, I don't know, doing something sane like making a motion to the dependency court, a different court saying this kid is at risk, to block the other court's order, couldn't be bothered to do that. You know what they did with this girl when she showed up in their state? They freaking threw her into a violent psychiatric lockdown facility against her will for 5 days, from Valentine's night until Tuesday.
Well, we really need to pray. I mean, first of all, when I interviewed Noreen Gosch, whose son was abducted, Johnny Gosch, in 1982 in Des Moines, Iowa, when he finally, found his mom in the middle of the night, knocked on the door after a Lisa Gibbons interview, and she said on live TV, Johnny, I'm no longer living in the house you're abducted from. Now I'm living in a different house. My address is in the Des Moines phone book. Johnny, come home. 3 months later, Leigh, knock at the door, middle of the night, opens the door. He's there now in his 20s and with another boy his age. And he said, Mom, I've got abducted by an elite pedophile ring that goes up to the highest levels of government, business, and entertainment. And so you're dealing with these pedophile rings that are in the judges, the government, entertainment. We're seeing it. You're exactly what you're talking about, Leigh. Yeah. Exactly what you're talking about is collusion. And we've got to see it come down. I've only got 5 minutes left because I got another podcast I have to jump on. But Leigh, what can the people do? What can they do? Can they write letters? Can they call?
They absolutely can write letters. All the facts that I just told you about, you don't need to worry about remembering them or replaying and taking notes. Just go to my website. It is leighdundis.com. My mother gave me extra letters in my name. There's 5 letters in my first name, LEIGHDUNDAS.com. If you want my book, you can get it there. It talks a lot about the sex trafficking work in Asia. But go to the child abuse page on that website. By the way, these men are innocent until proven guilty. But hey, let's help prove them guilty, shall we? So these are all the allegations I told you about are from the lips of the child, but they have not been convicted yet. So they're technically innocent. So these are just allegations, but you can go to the child abuse page. You can read all about it. And if you think a miscarriage of justice has been done, you can just print that page out. And at the very bottom, right above the crime scene photos, at the very bottom of that page, I've got 4 different phone numbers, addresses, email addresses, and you can just email, get all your friends, all 20 of your friends, 200 of your friends, do an email, letter writing, and phone calling campaign to the Attorney General, to DeSantis, to everybody you can think of. And I put all the data in there so you don't have to scrounge it up yourself. The other thing you can do is go to the Healthy Living page on my website. I am not charging this family a dime. I was never charging any of these people I helped a dime. They can't afford it. I'm doing it out of the goodness of my heart. But like you all, I'm not a trust fund baby. I need to pay my mortgage. So we are back doing stem cell. This is not aborted baby fetal tissue stem cell. This is umbilical cord stem cell, which nobody needs after the baby's born. They just throw it in the trash. But if you're not familiar with what stem cell does, they are getting it so good. This is a paralyzed from the neck down quadriplegic surfer, old guy down in San Diego. This is a year ago to the day, April 2nd, 2024. This is Channel 7. It's not Leigh and Meri Crouley. Channel 7 mainstream media. He had stem cell as a paralyzed quadriplegic, and he was now walking around his backyard. In this case, this is a racehorse with a severed tendon. They should have shot the horse. The stem cell on his tendon grew the tendon back together, and he ran and won a race with 22 steeplejumps in it 1 year later. So if you want to learn more about how stem cell can help your arthritis, your autoimmune, whatever you got going on, get yourself back in the game without having to go through a knee replacement, go to the Healthy Living page on my website, click on that, say, I want more data, we'll call you back. There's also some amazing water on there. It's not hydrogen water, it's oxygen water. It regrew this lady's thumb. Lady in Italy cut off her thumb. They put oxygen water in the bandage. Shockers. They thought it would help heal it. Instead, it regrew it. This is really bad blood on the one side that looks like the Hawaiian Islands. Lady drinks a glass of the oxygen water. 2 minutes later, her blood looks beautiful. So back to Meri's point with the root stuff, you guys got to be detoxing yourself. We're all exposed to the spike protein. Oxygen is one of the most beautiful things. I'm not saying that you're going to get the same wins the racehorse got, the paralyzed guy got, that you saw just there with the thumb, but I am saying bodies do better with oxygen and stem cells. That's how you get rid of disease. So if you want to learn more, Healthy Living page on my website. And again, please pick up the pen, pick up your keyboard, and hit hard at Michigan and Florida. They can do better than they have done on this case, and we the people can make them do better. So that's your homework for the day. Meri, thanks so much for having me. You're amazing. I can't wait to see you you're at Charlie Ward's event later this in 2 weeks, aren't you? Are you going down there?
Oh, actually, I'm going to be up in Idaho. I'm doing an event at the state capitol at the Lincoln Auditorium on actually Saturday, May 3rd. And so I won't be at that, but I will. There's a lot of things coming up. So you guys can go to my website, mericrouley.com. It has a lot of different, where I'm going to be, different events that we're doing. And Pastor Dave Bryan at Glad Tidings Church. I'm going to be actually there in June speaking, and you will be there too, Leigh, won't you?
I will. And if your people don't know, he is buying a low security women's prison. We're going to flip it and convert it into being paradise on earth for hundreds of sex trafficked youth. It is a major undertaking. But if you don't know Pastor Dave Bryan, you should. He is doing God's work. That man is genuine, honest, and he has known the term satanic ritual abuse since the 90s, which is going way back. So this boy, it is not his first day. He is doing God's work. Like I said, Meri and I will be at his Revelations conference the weekend of June 22nd, I want to say it is, and it's going to be phenomenal. So I will, June 20th, 21st, 22nd, I will see you there, Meri, and hopefully all of our friends who are listening, because it's going to be great. Going to be great.
Yeah, Rev 17 conference at Church of Glad Tidings in Yuba City. It's a short distance from Sacramento. So anyway, well, Leigh, thank you for watching, and thanks for watching. Now is the time. I know there was some hard-hitting subjects on here, but let me tell you, what if this was your child? The Lord says, what you do to the least of these, you do unto him. And we have to stand up. We have to fight for this stuff because it's very prevalent and it's growing, and we, the people, need to stand up. And I do believe that the purity, God is going to bring a movement where it's going to change the hearts of the people. And I'll just close with this, Leigh. God told me to tell the men, you're not a pimp, a pirate, or a pawn, but a prince and a king. And it's the pornography that fuels the trafficking. And you know what? We've got to cut this stuff off. If you people are watching porn, a lot of these people in the porn videos are trafficked, and it's not a good situation. Cut it out. Quit watching. It is highly addictive, and it leads to where every girl I interviewed said the guy always came and showed them their phone. So it's predominant, and it's happening in the church. People just need to say no and just let the Holy Spirit deliver you and free you from this stuff. And get help. There's a number of places to get help. We can talk about it in another show. But anyway, thank you, Leigh, for coming on. Thanks for watching. Now is the time. Please share this with as many people as you can, and subscribe to our channels, and also hit the notification bell so you'll be informed when we're doing another show. So God bless you. I got to jump on another podcast, but love you all. The best is yet to come. God bless you, Leigh. I'll see you soon.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for watching.